There are some challenges. BRICS is having some challenges, but more so, they're expanding. I'm going to talk about those challenges in this video, but essentially give you a little bit of backstory if you're new to understanding what BRICS is and why it is so important, because it is critical. If you are not living in a BRICS country or BRICS plus country, you really should be reconsidering your long-term investment strategy. And we're gonna talk about it in this video. Welcome to my channel. My name is Ashley. On my channel, Ashley in Africa, I share my experience of living, moving, and doing business here on the continent of Africa. I moved from Atlanta, Georgia in 2020 and have been living in Africa nearly 4 years now. Currently, I live in South Africa, which is a part of the BRICS conglomerate. And I'm loving it, I'm thriving, and it's fantastic. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. I can't wait to get into this information because guys, BRICS is expanding. It's expanding. And what does that mean? That means growth. That means the strategy that they have, while there are some challenges, is effective enough that developing countries, over 40 of them, are formally expressing interest to join the bloc. And we're gonna get into that. So if this type of content sounds interesting to you and resonates with you, be sure to like it, share it with someone else who would like it as well, and subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna be sharing a lot more BRICS content. You guys are showing me that you value it, and I love sharing and researching about it. And quite frankly, it's just great knowing that when you do research and you know what you know, that it's all working out in your favor. So let's get into it. Guys, I have my notes, as you can see, and so I'll be looking back and forth just to make sure that I cover it all, but there's so much to cover that I potentially will do another video as well. But as I mentioned, more than 40 countries have expressed their interest in joining BRICS. Nigeria is one of them. And this is so exciting because Nigeria is one of Africa's biggest economies. South Africa and Nigeria tend to go back and forth, as well as Ethiopia, who has already joined the economic conglomerate. We'll get into that more, but this number of 40 countries is steadily increasing. And this content is coming from an interview done by Grigory Karasin. He is a senior Russian politician. You guys like to criticize Russian politicians that are in the US. It's because of the propaganda that you've been fed about Russia. And I'm gonna talk to you about why this conglomerate is gonna work, because this is not about the bad guy versus the good guy. This is about economic development. This is about raw materials. This is about production, manufacturing, nations that are producing things versus consuming things. While America is a consumption state, the #1 country for consumers, they are not on the list for producers. So this politician, this Russian politician, Grigory Karasin, he basically talked about this in an interview last week, earlier this week, emphasizing the attractiveness of BRICS' flexible cooperation model, citing, the ongoing rise of potential member nations as evidence. So flexibility is everything as we're going into this next revolutionary generation. And essentially, the recent addition of members, Saudi Arabia, Iran, the UAE, Egypt, and Ethiopia, the combined GDP of this bloc is approximately 58.5 trillion USD. This is huge. And when you have more countries looking to add to that, it is growing their economic influence and their economic affairs globally, right? So, the goal is that BRICS is more inclusive, a more inclusive representation of the global South. And it is positioning itself to have greater influence in global economic and political affairs. So, the goal essentially for BRICS, for those of you that are new to understanding, is so that developing countries can develop using their own currency. In the past, as even in the current, most countries, in order for them to trade with another country, they have to go through the Federal Reserve by taking their currency, transferring it into dollars, to then trading in dollars. This is no longer necessary. It's no longer beneficial to these developing countries because the US is just producing money at this point, and they have been for decades. But essentially, these countries that are actually producing and have valuable raw materials have to essentially use their money to trade it with the USD. And essentially, it is the reason why the US has had this position of economic power. But it's changing. And this de-dollarization move is intended to strengthen economic ties within the bloc and with other developing countries that also want to be a part of this bloc. So also, the goal is also to keep promoting sustainable development, climate action, and addressing issues like poverty, hunger, consistent with sustainable development goals. You know, this conversation around global warming and the positioning of it from the West, while, yes, water levels are rising, waters are warming, these things are real, it's essentially because of the practices of the West. The overconsumption of fish, the overconsumption of goods, the overconsumption of plastic, and essentially they're requiring these developing countries to use alternative energy while they source the minerals required for them to keep using pollutants. And the goal of this block is to say, hey, let's do this sustainably, let's do this consciously, and let's not be bullied by Western influence so that we can keep the lights on. And this is a big issue here in South Africa. And, you know, one of the reasons why South Africa is such a powerful component of the BRICS conglomerate. So while these are all really positives, there are some challenges, and the challenges related to this expansion and this desire to join pose geopolitical risks, pose economic risks, pose military risks, all of these things that are happening, that we're seeing happen globally, essentially are to keep developing countries under the developmental constraints of these Western influences. So there isn't necessarily a formal institutional structure currently with BRICS. You do have a lot of people complaining about this, saying this and that and this and that, but this takes time. This is like a startup. If you've ever worked in the startup space, in the startup tech space, you know that it takes years for new technologies to be profitable. What Meta is today is so different from where it started as Facebook. It wasn't profitable for years before it became profitable. Structure matters, but flexibility is key, especially in this new digital age. And so the inclusion of countries with significant geopolitical and economic differences, such as Iran and Saudi Arabia, adds complexity to the internal dynamics that exist. And while BRICS is set to continue its expansion, despite these challenges, these considerations have to be qualified, right? And they have to be thought of because the group does need to be cohesive. They're aware of that, but that's why they're having meetings, literally monthly, quarterly, I want to say daily, because being here in South Africa, I've seen the new development bank. Things are happening. While they're not happening at a rapid pace for us in the forefront, we have no idea what's happening behind the scenes. But to have announcements like Nigeria, and to see what is happening on the west coast of Africa, where European influence is literally being removed from the neo-colonial positions that they once had, we just need to know that it's happening and that we need to pay attention. The goal is to remain on creating counter narrative to Western economic policy, their political dominance, and positioning itself as a key player in global affairs. And so when you have a goal and you are focused on that goal and you do something every day towards that goal, whether you're a person, an institution, or an economic conglomerate like BRICS, you're gonna achieve that goal. And we're already seeing it happen. We're seeing the videos of the great nation of America's president, Sleepy Joe, we're seeing the reality of what is happening politically and economically in the West. We would be remiss to ignore it. Not me, because I'm here. I'm here on the continent strategically as a person that studied economics, that had been studying it for years, that thought, well, I don't know. I don't have a PhD. How can I really understand what's going on? Listen, if you are a researcher and you have an interest in understanding where your money is going to perform best for you, tap in to the AIA Insider, short for Ashley in Africa, and Africa Investors Academy, the Insider. I share weekly emails on economic shifts, economic changes happening here on the continent. I focus on countries that are most attractive to the diaspora, including South Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, and Ghana. But now with Nigeria coming into the fold, we'll get some content on Nigeria, as well as Egypt, as well as Ethiopia. And I just love reporting on what's happening here on the continent. And obviously you love hearing it as well. So if you value this type of content, you want to learn more, click the link below, subscribe to the AIA Insider. You'll get weekly emails of content that I can't really share here on YouTube, but it will be additional research and resource for you when making decisions about your financial and your financial and your familial future and your lifestyle. Like, what do you want out of life? Do you want to be living in an economy on the decline or an economy on the incline, surrounded by other economies on the incline that are in alignment with your values as well? So join the link below, sign up for the Insider. You can get it free for 1 month, and then you'll be a part of the community for at least a year. So can't wait to see you on the Insider. The community is growing. If you value this content, like it, share it, and subscribe. Until the next video, I'll see you soon.